Captain Jake Morrison stood at the big window of his spaceship, looking out at the stars. The ship was called the UES Liberty, and it was one of the biggest human ships in space. Jake had been flying between stars for 20 years, and he had seen many things, but today felt different. Today felt like the end of something important. His communication device made a sound. Admiral Lisa Carter's voice came through from Earth. "Jake, we need to talk. The big meeting happened yesterday. The aliens have made their choice." Jake knew what she meant. For weeks, all the alien species in the galaxy had been meeting. They were talking about humans and whether humans should still help them with their problems. Jake had hoped they would decide to keep working together. But deep down, he knew the answer would be bad. "Tell me," Jake said. "They voted us out," Lisa said. Her voice sounded tired. "We have 6 months to leave. All humans must go back to Earth, or stay in our own space. No more helping with their wars. No more fixing their problems. No more anything." Jake closed his eyes. For 200 years, humans had been the ones who stopped wars before they started. When two alien groups wanted to fight, humans would sit between them and help them talk. When alien planets needed food or medicine, humans would bring it. When alien technology broke down, humans would fix it. Commander Ben Hayes walked up to Jake. Ben was Jake's second in command, and they had worked together for 10 years. "Captain, I'm getting reports from all over the galaxy. Every human station is getting the same message. We have to leave." Jake turned away from the window. "How many people are we talking about?" 2 million humans working on alien worlds," Ben said, looking at his tablet. "Another million on space stations. 500,000 in the peacekeeping forces. And about 300,000 scientists and doctors in research stations. That was almost 4 million people who would have to pack up their lives and leave. Many of them had been born on alien worlds. Some had alien friends. Some were married to aliens. But none of that mattered now. What's the reason they gave?" Jake asked. Ben read from his tablet. "They say we are too controlling. They say we make too many decisions for them. They say they want to handle their own problems without human interference." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Interference. That's what they call it when we stop them from killing each other. The communication device made another sound. This time it was Dr. Amy Walsh from the medical station near the Kepler system. "Captain Morrison, are you there?" "I'm here, Amy. What's happening?" "The local government just told me I have to leave my hospital. They want me to give them all my research before I go. 15 years of work on diseases that kill their people, and they think they can just take it." Amy had saved millions of alien lives with her medicine. She had worked day and night to find cures for sicknesses that humans didn't even get. But the aliens saw her work as something they owned, not something she had given them. "What did you tell them?" Jake asked. "I told them no. If they want us gone, then our work goes with us." Jake nodded. "Good. Ben, send a message to all human stations. Nothing gets left behind. No research, no technology, no equipment. If they don't want us, they don't get our work either." The next few hours were busy. Reports came in from all over the galaxy. The Draconian Empire wanted humans to leave but keep their space stations running. The Vegan Republic wanted human doctors to stay but human soldiers to go. The Helix Consortium wanted human technology but not human people. "They still don't understand," Jake said to Ben. "They think our help is just things they can use. They don't realize that our help is us." Ambassador Frank Coleman called from Nexus Prime, the biggest diplomatic world in the galaxy. "Jake, it's chaos here. Every species is arguing about what happens next. The Klangari want to take over human peacekeeping duties. The Altarians think they should control the trade routes. Nobody can agree on anything. Jake wasn't surprised. The aliens had spent so long letting humans handle the hard decisions that they had forgotten how to work together. Frank, start packing. We're not their problem anymore. What about the peace treaties we're supposed to sign next month? The Arcturus situation? The mining rights dispute in the Outer Rim? Not our problem, Jake said again. They voted us out. Let them solve their own problems. Frank was quiet for a moment. Jake, some of these conflicts could turn into wars without us there to help. Then that's their choice to make. It was hard to say those words. Jake had spent his whole career stopping wars. He had seen what happened when different species fought each other. Millions of people died. Whole planets could be destroyed. But the aliens had made their choice. They wanted to handle things themselves. Later that day, Jake got a call from his old friend, engineer Carol Patterson. She was in charge of the power systems that kept most of the Outer Rim planets running. Jake, they want me to train aliens to run the fusion reactors before I leave. But these systems are incredibly complex. It took me 15 years to understand them fully. How long would it take to train them properly? Jake asked. At least 5 years for the basics. 10 years to really know what they're doing. And that's if they're smart and willing to learn. Jake thought about this. Carol, do your best in the time we have. But if they can't learn it in 6 months, that's not your fault. Jake, if these reactors fail, entire worlds could lose power. Billions of people could die. Jake felt the weight of those words. But he also remembered all the times aliens had complained about human involvement. All the times they had said, humans treated them like children. All the times they had demanded independence. Carol, we gave them warnings. We told them what would happen if we left. They didn't listen. We can't force them to accept our help. Over the next few weeks, more problems became clear. Human farmers had been growing food for dozens of worlds that couldn't feed themselves. Human engineers had been maintaining communication networks that connected the entire galaxy. Human scientists had been doing research that benefited everyone. All of this would end in 6 months. Jake called a meeting with all the human leaders. In the sector, Admiral Lisa Carter joined them by video call from Earth. I want everyone to understand something, she said. This is not a punishment. This is not revenge. This is what they asked for. They want independence, so we're giving it to them. But Admiral, said Dr. Amy Walsh, people will die without our help. People die with our help too, Lisa replied. The difference is that now it's their choice. For 200 years, we've been making the hard decisions so they don't have. T.O., we've been taking responsibility for problems that weren't ours to solve. Maybe it's time they learn to take responsibility for themselves. Jake looked around the room at the faces of people who had dedicated their lives to helping others. It was hard to walk away. But sometimes the kindest thing you could do was let someone learn from their own mistakes. All right, everyone, Jake sighed. We have 6 months to wrap up 2 centuries of work. Let's make sure we do it right. And let's make sure we don't leave anything behind that we might regret. As the meeting ended, Jake looked out at the stars one more time. In 6 months, this would all be someone else's problem. He wondered if the galaxy was ready for what came next. He had a feeling they were about to find out. Dr. Amy Walsh packed the last box of medical supplies from her laboratory. The Kepler station had been her home for 15 years. She had built the most advanced medical center in the galaxy here, and now she was tearing it all down without her assistant. Dr. Kevin Brooks carried another box to the transport shuttle. Kevin had worked with Amy for 8 years. He was born on Earth, but had spent most of his adult life helping alien patients. Doctor, the Helix Consortium is here again. They want to talk to you. Amy sighed. For the past 3 weeks, alien officials had been coming to her station every day. They all wanted the same thing, They wanted her to leave her research behind. They wanted her computers, her medical equipment, and all the knowledge she had gained from treating alien diseases. "Send them in," Amy said. 3 aliens walked into her office. The leader was a tall, blue-skinned Helixian named Var 9. Amy had saved his daughter's life 2 years ago when the child caught a rare blood disease. Now he stood in her office like she was his enemy. "Dr. Walsh," Var 9 said, "we have discussed this many times. Your research was done in our space, using our resources. It belongs to us now." Amy looked at him calmly. "Var 9, I used my own equipment. I used my own knowledge. I worked 18 hours a day for 15 years. I developed treatments for diseases that kill your people, and I did it all for free." "But you used our test subjects," another alien said. This was Kex Prime from the medical board. "Our people volunteered for your experiments. Your people came to me because they were dying," Amy replied. "I didn't force anyone to take my treatments. They came because their own doctors couldn't help them." She walked to her computer and started deleting files. Years of research disappeared with each button press. Treatments for 17 different alien diseases. Cures that had saved millions of lives. All of it gone. "What are you doing?" Var 9 shouted. "I'm taking my research with me," Amy said. "You wanted independence. You wanted us to stop interfering. This is what independence looks like." The aliens looked shocked. They had expected her to give them everything before she left. They thought humans would hand over all their work like a gift. "You cannot do this," Kex Prime said. "People will die without these treatments." Amy stopped typing and looked at him. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you voted us out." On the other side of the galaxy, engineer Carol Patterson shut down the fusion reactors that powered 6 different worlds. The reactors were massive machines that turned hydrogen into energy. They were incredibly complex and dangerous. Carol had designed most of them herself, but an alien engineer named Hex 7 watched her work. He was supposed to learn how to run the reactors after Carol left. But in 3 months of training, he had only learned the basics. "Carol," Hex 7 said, "you are moving too fast. I do not understand why you are shutting down reactor number 5. Carol looked at him with tired eyes. "Because reactor 5 has a microfracture in the containment field. If it's not repaired in the next week, the whole reactor could explode." "But you have not taught me how to repair microfractures." "I've been trying to teach you for 3 months," Carol said. "Repairing microfractures takes years of experience. You can't learn it in a few weeks." Hex 7 looked worried. "Then you must stay longer to train me properly." Carol shook her head. "I offered to stay and train your people for 2 more years. Your government said no. They said 6 months was enough time." She pointed to a large manual on the table. It was 3,000 pages long. "Everything you need to know is in there. I wrote it all down for you. But reading about it and doing it are 2 different things. What happens if we make a mistake?" Hex 7 asked. Carol didn't answer. She just continued shutting down the systems. Some mistakes with fusion reactors killed thousands of people. Other mistakes killed millions. But that wasn't her problem anymore. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Frank Coleman closed the human embassy. The building had been the center of galactic diplomacy for over a century. Every major peace treaty had been signed in this building. Every important trade agreement had been negotiated here. Now it sat empty. Frank's assistant, Lieutenant Steve Parker, carried the last boxes to their ship. "Sir, the Altarian ambassador wants to speak with you. He says it's urgent." Frank looked at the empty embassy one more time. "Tell him the embassy is closed. If he wants to talk to humans, he can." "Send a message to Earth." Steve hesitated. "Sir, He says there's been a shooting incident between Draconian and Epsilon ships. They want us to mediate before it becomes a war. Frank had handled dozens of these incidents over the years. Usually, it was simple. He would get both sides to sit down and talk. He would help them find a solution that everyone could live with. It was what humans did, but not anymore. Steve, send them a message. Tell them we're no longer involved in galactic affairs. They'll have to solve their own problems. But, sir, this could start a war. Frank looked at his young assistant. Steve had joined the diplomatic corps because he wanted to help keep peace in the galaxy. It was hard to walk away from that mission. Steve, for 200 years, we've been stopping wars before they started. We've been solving problems that weren't ours to solve. The aliens said they didn't want our help anymore. They said we were too controlling. So now we're giving them what they asked for. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were happening everywhere. Human teachers closed their schools and took their knowledge with them. Human doctors shut down their hospitals and left alien patients to find other care. Human farmers stopped growing food for worlds that couldn't feed themselves. Captain Jake Morrison watched it all happen from his ship. Every day, he got reports from human installations around the galaxy. Every day, more humans packed up and prepared to leave. Captain, Ben Hayes said, we're getting reports of problems already. A power grid on Vega Prime is having issues. 3 worlds in the Outer Rim are reporting food shortages. And the communication network is starting to break down. Jake wasn't surprised. Humans had been maintaining these systems for decades. The aliens had never learned how to do it themselves, because they never needed to. There was always a human around to fix things. Any requests for help? Jake asked. Dozens, but they're not asking us to stay. They're asking for technical manuals and equipment. They still think they can do this without us. Jake almost laughed. The aliens still didn't understand. They thought human help was just things they could use. They didn't realize that human help was humans themselves. It was experience and knowledge that took decades to build. Dr. Amy Walsh finished packing her last box. The medical station that had once saved millions of lives was now empty. All her equipment was going back to Earth. All her research was stored in human computers. She walked through the empty halls one more time. In the children's ward, she remembered. Little Tech 5, a Draconian child who had been born with a heart defect. Amy had spent months developing a new surgical technique to save her. Now Tech 5 was a healthy teenager. In the emergency room. She remembered the night a cargo ship had exploded near the station. 47 aliens had been brought in with severe burns. Amy and her team had worked for 16 hours straight to save them all. They had succeeded. And in her office, she remembered thousands of consultations with alien doctors who didn't know how to treat their own people's diseases. She had taught them everything she could, but they had only learned the easy parts. Now, they would have to learn the hard parts on their own. Amy's shuttle pilot, Lieutenant Gary Collins, helped her carry the last boxes. Doctor, are you ready to go? Amy looked at the empty station one more time. 15 years of her life were in this place. But the aliens had made their choice. They wanted independence. They wanted to solve their own problems. I'm ready, she said. As her shuttle flew away from Kepler Station. Amy didn't look back. Behind her, the station's lights went out one by one. Soon, it would be just another empty building in space. But Amy carried something with her that the aliens couldn't. She carried the knowledge of how to save lives. And now that knowledge was leading with her. The galaxy was about to learn what it was like to live without humans. Amy wondered if they were ready for that lesson. She had a feeling they weren't. 3 months had passed since the last human ship left galactic space. Chancellor Vex Prime of the Draconian Empire sat in his office, staring at a problem that seemed impossible to solve. The Epsilon Trade Federation claimed they owned the mining rights to the Kepler asteroid field. The Draconians said the field belonged to them. Both sides had documents that proved they were right. Both sides had lawyers arguing their case. In the old days, this would have been simple. Human mediators would look at both claims, check the galactic law books, and make a fair decision. Everyone would accept it, because humans were known for being fair. But there were no humans left to ask. Chancellor, his aide Kex-12 said, the Galactic Assembly has formed a committee to handle the dispute. Vex Prime looked up. Who's on this committee? 5 species. The Vegans, the Altarians, the Helix, the Arcturians, and the Tau Cetians. And what have they decided? Kex-12 looked uncomfortable. They've been meeting for 2 weeks. They can't agree on anything. The Vegans think the field should be split equally. The Altarians say we should fight for it. The Helix want to study the legal documents for another year. Vex Prime slammed his fist on the desk. A year? The Epsilon ships are already moving toward the field. If we wait a year, they'll mine everything and leave nothing for us. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, engineer Tony Harrison sat. In his office on Luna Base, Tony had once worked on alien worlds, maintaining their power systems. Now he monitored those same systems from Earth, watching them slowly break down. His boss, Director Helen Foster, walked into the office. "What's the latest report, Tony?" Tony pointed to his screen. The power grid on Centauri Prime is showing red warning lights. They're getting rolling blackouts across 3 continents. What's wrong with it? They tried to upgrade the fusion reactors without understanding how they work. They changed the frequency modulation, and now the whole grid is unstable. Helen shook her head. Can we help them? We could fix it in a week if they let us come back. But they won't ask for our help. They keep sending messages asking for technical manuals and computer programs. They think they can solve it with paperwork. Tony pulled up another screen. It's not just Centauri Prime. The Vegan Republic is having brownouts. The Helix Consortium's hospitals are losing power during surgeries. And the Outer Rim mining colonies are shutting down completely. All across the galaxy, systems that humans had built and maintained for decades were starting to fail. The aliens had the instruction manuals, but they didn't have the experience. They knew which buttons to push, but they didn't understand why. Back in Draconian space, the asteroid field dispute was getting worse. Both sides had sent military ships to protect their claims. 50 Draconian warships faced 40 Epsilon vessels in the empty space around the asteroids. Admiral Zex Prime commanded the Draconian fleet. He had fought in 3 wars and won them all. But he had never faced a situation like this without human peacekeepers nearby. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "the Epsilon commander wants to talk. Put him on screen." Commander Yell 7 of the Epsilon Federation appeared on the view screen. He looked angry and tired. "Admiral, your ships need to leave this sector immediately. This field belongs to us." "Commander," Zex Prime replied, "our legal claim goes back 200 years. Your people signed a treaty giving us these rights. That treaty was written by humans," Yell 7 said. "Now that the humans are gone, we don't have to follow their rules anymore." Both commanders knew this was dangerous talk. If they started ignoring old treaties, every agreement in the galaxy could be questioned. But without humans to enforce the law, who would stop them? "Commander," Zex Prime said carefully, "if you attack our ships, we will defend ourselves. And if you attack ours, we will destroy you." The screen went black. Both fleets prepared for battle. On Earth, former Ambassador Rachel Torres sat in her retirement home in Colorado. She was watching the news from galactic space on her television. Her husband, retired Admiral Carl Mason, sat beside her. How bad is it getting? Carl asked. Rachel changed the channel to another news station. The draconian Epsilon situation is about to explode. There are reports of shooting between patrol ships. Both sides are calling up reserves. Any word from the Galactic Assembly? There. Still arguing about who should handle it. Every species wants to be in charge, but none of them want to take responsibility if something goes wrong. Carl shook his head. We would have had this solved in a week. We would have had it solved before it started, Rachel corrected. We would have seen the signs and brought both sides together before they sent warships. The news showed pictures of the two fleets facing each other. Hundreds of ships filled with thousands of crew members, all ready to die over a pile of rocks in space. Rachel, Carl said quietly, how many people are going to die because we're not there? Rachel didn't answer. She knew the numbers would be terrible. The first shots were fired 2 days later. A draconian patrol ship detected an Epsilon mining vessel near the asteroid field. The draconian captain ordered the ship to leave. The Epsilon captain refused. What happened next was unclear. Both sides claimed the other fired first. But within minutes, the patrol ship was destroyed, and 12 draconian crew members were dead. Admiral Zex Prime received the news while eating breakfast. All ships, battle stations. We are now at war with the Epsilon Federation. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 14 ships were destroyed and 3,000 people were dead. The asteroid field was still there, but now it was surrounded by wreckage and bodies. News of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species began choosing sides. The Altarians supported the Draconians. The Tau-Cetians backed the Epsilon Federation. Ancient alliances were activated. Old grudges were remembered. Within a week, 12 different species were involved in the conflict. Supply convoys were attacked. Civilian ships were searched and seized. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries became war zones. Back on Luna base, Tony Harrison watched the chaos unfold. Helen were getting emergency calls from 6 different worlds. Their power grids are failing because they can't get replacement parts through the war zones. Helen looked at the reports. The Kepler medical station that Dr. Walsh left is going dark. They can't get the medicines they need to treat patients. Are we going to help? Helen was quiet for a long moment. Tony, 3 months ago, these same. People voted us out of their space. They said we were controlling and interfering. They said they could handle their own problems. But people are dying. People die in wars, Tony. That's why we spent 200 years preventing them. The war spread like a fire. Trade agreements collapsed as ships couldn't travel safely between worlds. The communication network that humans had maintained began breaking down as relay stations were destroyed or abandoned. On the industrial world of Vega Prime, the power grid finally failed completely. 3 billion people were left without electricity. Hospitals shut down. Food processing plants stopped working. Transportation systems collapsed. The vegan government sent desperate messages to every species in the galaxy, begging for help. But everyone was too busy with their own problems to respond. President Cole 9 of Vega Prime sat in his dark office, lit only by emergency power. His aide brought him reports on paper because the computers were down. Sir, the death toll from the blackouts has reached 50,000. The hospitals can't function without power. Food is spoiling in warehouses. People are starting to riot. President Cole 9 remembered the human engineers who had maintained their power grid for decades. He had supported the vote to expel them, saying vegans could handle their own technology. Now his people were dying in the dark, and he finally understood what they had lost. Send a message to Earth, he said quietly. Sir? Send a message to the humans. Tell them we need help. His aide looked uncomfortable. Sir, what should we offer them in return? President Cole 9 stared out his window at the dark city below. Tell them we were wrong. 1 year had passed since the humans left. The galaxy was burning. What started as a simple dispute over asteroid mining rights had grown into the largest war anyone could remember. 12 species were fighting each other across 40 star systems. Trade routes that had connected the galaxy for centuries were now battlefields. Admiral Zex Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching another planet burn. The world below had once been home to 50 million people. Now it was a dead rock, poisoned by radiation from weapons that should never have been used. Admiral, his communications officer said, we're receiving a surrender offer from the Epsilon. Third Fleet. Zex Prime didn't feel victorious. He felt sick. In 1 year of war, over 10 million people had died. Entire worlds had been destroyed. And for what? A pile of rocks in space that both sides could have shared. Accept their surrender, he said quietly, and send medical ships to help their wounded. His second-in-command looked surprised. Sir, there are enemies. No, Zex Prime replied. We're all idiots who forgot how to talk to each other. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Patricia Young sat in Earth's Global Crisis Center, monitoring the disasters spreading across space. Patricia had once worked on alien worlds, helping them deal with medical emergencies. Now she watched those same worlds struggle with problems they couldn't solve. Her assistant, Dr. Matt Sullivan, brought her the latest reports. Patricia, the radiation poisoning on Kepler 442b is getting worse. They're reporting 3 million dead now. Patricia remembered. Kepler 442b. It was an industrial world with massive fusion reactors that powered half the sector. Human engineers had built those reactors and maintained them for decades. When the humans left, alien engineers had tried to keep them running. They had failed catastrophically. What caused the reactor failure? Patricia asked. They tried to increase power output without understanding the containment protocols, Matt replied. The main reactor exploded and spread radioactive material across 3 continents. Patricia closed her eyes. She had trained alien doctors for years, teaching them how to treat radiation sickness. But her lessons had covered small accidents, not disasters of this size. Are they asking for help? Matt nodded. They've sent 47 requests in the past month. But they're not asking for our doctors to come back. They want us to send medicine and equipment. Patricia understood the problem. Treating radiation. Poisoning wasn't just about having the right medicine. It required experience, knowledge, and techniques that took years to learn. You couldn't just read about it in a book. What's our official response? Matt handed her a standard form letter. Earth is no longer involved in galactic affairs. We wish them well in resolving their difficulties. Patricia had helped write that letter. It sounded polite, but it meant no. The aliens had voted humans out of their space. Now they had to live with the consequences. Meanwhile, the political structure of the galaxy was collapsing. The Galactic Assembly, which had governed space for 200 years, could no longer function. Without human mediators to help different species work together, every meeting became a shouting match. Senator Paul 8 of the Altarian Republic sat in the empty assembly building on Nexus Prime. Half the member species had withdrawn from the organization. The other half were too busy fighting wars to attend meetings. Senator, her aide said, we've received formal withdrawal notices from 6 more species today. The Helix Consortium, the Outer Rim Coalition, the Vegan Republic, and 3 others. Paul 8 wasn't surprised. The assembly had been designed to work with human support. Humans had written most of the laws. Humans had enforced the treaties. Humans had helped different species understand each other's needs. Without humans, the assembly was just a building full of angry aliens who couldn't agree on anything. What about the emergency sessions for the radiation crisis? Paul had asked. Cancelled. The Draconians say it's not their problem. The Epsilon Federation is too. Busy rebuilding their fleet. The Tau Cetians want to study the situation for another year before taking action. 3 million people were dying from radiation poisoning, and the galaxy's government wanted to study the problem. On the dying world of Kepler 442b, Dr. Hex 9 worked in a hospital that barely functioned. The power came and went randomly. Medical equipment broke down daily, and patients kept arriving with radiation sickness that he didn't know how to treat. Dr. Hex 9 had been trained by human doctors 15 years ago, but they had only taught him basic medicine. They had never expected him to handle a disaster this large. Doctor, his nurse said, the children's ward is full. We have nowhere to put the new patients. Hex 9 looked at the latest arrival. A young Kepler native, maybe 8 years old, with radiation burns covering half her body. In the old days, he would have called Dr. Amy Walsh at the medical station. She would have known exactly what to do. But Dr. Walsh was gone. Her station was empty. Her research had been deleted. All her knowledge had left with her. Put the child in my office, Hex 9 said. I'll sleep in the supply closet. He tried to remember what the human doctors had taught him about radiation treatment. Cool the burns. Replace lost fluids. Watch for infection. But this child's injuries were beyond anything he had seen before. Hex 9 went to his computer and searched for human medical databases. Maybe there were still some files he could access. But all the human servers had been shut down when they left. All their knowledge was locked away on Earth. The child died 3 hours later. She was the 47th patient Hex 9 had lost that week. On Earth, former General Nancy Price lived quietly on a farm in Kansas. She grew corn and soybeans and tried not to think about the galaxy burning. But the news kept finding her. Her old communication device made a sound. Someone was trying to reach her on the emergency military channel. Nancy almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Fleet Admiral Zenka of the Altarian Defense Force appeared on her screen. Nancy had worked with him for 20 years. They had stopped 3 wars together and saved countless lives. Nancy, Zenka said, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I have to try. Nancy had been expecting this call for months. What do you want, Zenka? Our worlds are dying, Nancy. The war is spreading. Our medical systems are collapsing. Our governments can't function. We need the humans to come back. That's not my decision to make anymore, Nancy replied. I'm retired, but you could talk to your leaders. You could convince them to help us. Nancy looked at her old friend through the screen. Zenka looked older, more tired. The war had aged. Him, Zenka, do you remember what you said at the assembly vote? You said humans were oppressive overlords who treated other species like children. Zenka's face fell. I was wrong. We were all wrong. No, Nancy said quietly. You were right. We did treat you like children. Because you acted like children. You wanted us to solve all your problems, make all your hard decisions, and take all the responsibility. But you also wanted the freedom to complain about us whenever things didn't. Go your way, Nancy, please. Billions of people are going to die. Billions of people were always going to die, Nancy replied. That's what happens in space. Disease, accidents, wars, natural disasters. The only difference is that now you have to deal with it yourselves. She paused, thinking about all the times aliens had criticized human involvement. All the speeches about independence and self-determination. Zenka, for 200 years we kept you safe. We stopped your wars before they started. We cured your diseases. We fixed your broken technology. We fed your hungry people. And what did we get in return? We were grateful. No, you weren't. You were resentful. You said we were controlling you. You said you could do better without us. So we left. This is what better looks like. Zenka was quiet for a long moment. What would it take for humans to come back? Nancy thought about that question. What would it take? An apology? A promise to never vote humans out again? A guarantee that aliens would listen to human advice? I don't know, Nancy said finally. Maybe nothing. Maybe some lessons can only be learned the hard way. She ended the call and went back to her cornfield. Behind her, the communication device kept making sounds as more aliens tried to reach her. She didn't answer. On the dying world of Vega Prime, President Cole 9 sat in his emergency bunker, reading reports by candlelight. The power grid had been down for 6 months. The population was surviving on emergency rations that would run out soon. Sir, his aide said, we've received responses to our messages to Earth. Cole 9 looked up hopefully. What did they say? His aide handed him a printed message. It was the same form letter they had been receiving for months. Polite, but firm. Earth was not involved in galactic affairs anymore. Send another message, Cole 9 said desperately. Tell them we'll give them anything they want. Mining rights, trade agreements, territory. Anything. Sir, we've sent that message 12 times. They don't respond. Cole 9 realized the terrible truth. The humans didn't want anything from them. They had everything they needed on Earth. The galaxy had nothing to offer except problems that humans had already spent centuries solving. Outside his bunker, Vega Prime continued its slow death. Without power, without technology, without hope. The galaxy was learning what independence really meant. 5 years had passed since the humans left galactic space. Captain Peter Collins stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Guardian, looking at reports that painted a picture of complete collapse. Captain, his communications officer said, we're receiving another distress signal from the outer rim. That's the 47th one this week. Peter didn't bother to read it. They were all the same. Desperate pleas for help from worlds that were dying slowly, sometimes quickly. Any response from Earth Command? Peter asked. The same as always, sir. We acknowledge their message and wish them well. Peter nodded. It had been Earth's policy for 5 years now. Listen to the aliens' problems, but don't get involved. Let them solve their own difficulties. His second-in-command, Commander Lisa Young, walked up with a data tablet. Peter, the weekly intelligence report is ready. Do you want the summary? Give me the numbers. Lisa read from her tablet. 47 worlds have gone completely dark this month. No communications, no energy readings, no signs of life. The total count of dead worlds is now over 300. Peter closed his eyes. 300 worlds, billions of people, all dead because their technology failed and they didn't know how to fix it. What about the war zones? The fighting has mostly stopped, Lisa continued. Not because anyone made peace, but because most of the fleets have been destroyed. The few surviving ships don't have fuel or supplies to continue fighting. The great galactic war that started over asteroid mining rights had burned itself out. Not through victory or defeat, but through simple exhaustion. There was nothing left to fight with, and nowhere left to fight. Any functioning governments? Maybe a dozen small systems that haven't collapsed yet, but they're all isolated. The hyperspace communication network is down across most of the galaxy. Most trade routes are blocked by debris from destroyed ships. Peter thought about what the galaxy had been like when he was young. Thousands of thriving worlds connected by trade and communication. Different species working together, sharing knowledge and resources. It had been beautiful. Now it was a graveyard. On the former diplomatic world of Nexus Prime, the great assembly building sat empty and dark. Ambassador Sarah Kim walked through the abandoned halls, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She had been the last human ambassador to serve here, and now she had returned as part of a survey mission. "Sarah," her escort said, "be careful in this section. The power has been out for 3 years. Some of the floors are unsafe." Sarah's escort was Commander Nick Chun from Earth Intelligence. His job was to assess what was left of galactic civilization. So far, the answer was not much. They walked into the main assembly chamber, where representatives from hundreds of species had once gathered to make decisions for the galaxy. Now the room was filled with dust and broken furniture. "What happened here?" Sarah asked. "According to our records, the last assembly session was 2 years ago," Nick replied. "Only 12 species showed up. They spent 3 days arguing about who should be in charge. Then everyone went home. Nobody ever came back." Sarah walked to the podium where she had given so many speeches. She remembered trying to warn the assembly about what would happen if humans left. They had laughed at her. They said aliens were perfectly capable of governing themselves. "Nick, do we know what happened to the member species?" Nick checked his tablet. Most of their governments collapsed within the first 2 years. The Draconian Empire broke up into 17 smaller kingdoms that fight each other constantly. The Vegan Republic had a civil war that killed half their population. The Helix Consortium just disappeared. Their entire space went silent 6 months ago. They continued walking through the empty building. In the diplomatic quarters, Sarah found her old office. Her nameplate was still on the door, covered in dust. Inside, her desk was exactly as she had left it. Papers were scattered around, and her coffee cup was still sitting there, now filled with mold. On her desk was a letter she had never sent. Sarah picked it up and read it. It was a final warning to the assembly, written the day before the vote to expel humans. She had tried to explain what would happen if they lost. Human support. She had never sent it because she knew they wouldn't listen. Meanwhile, on the dead world of Vega Prime, former Counselor Vex 9 sat in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's most beautiful city. The atmospheric processors had failed 2 years ago, and now the air was slowly becoming toxic. The Vex-9 was one of only a few thousand people still alive on the planet. Most had died when the power grid collapsed. Others had left on the last working ships. But some, like Vex 9, had stayed because they had nowhere else to go. She looked up at the darkening sky. Without the atmospheric processors, the planet's climate was reverting to its natural state. In another year, maybe 2, the air would be unbreathable. Vex 9 remembered the vote 5 years ago. She had been one of the loudest voices demanding that humans leave galactic affairs. She had given passionate speeches about alien independence and self-determination. "Humans treat us like children," she had said to cheering crowds. "They make our decisions for us. They solve our problems without asking what we want. We are not children. We are intelligent beings capable of governing ourselves." Now, sitting in the ruins of her world, she finally understood the truth. Humans hadn't treated them like children because they thought aliens were stupid. Humans had treated them like children because they acted like children. Children wanted all the benefits of adult life without any of the responsibilities. They wanted their problems solved without having to learn how to solve them. They wanted to be taken care of while also being free to complain about their caretakers. A small transport ship flew overhead. Vex 9 waved at it, hoping it might land and rescue her. But the ship kept flying. There were too many dead worlds and too few rescue ships to save everyone. She thought about the human engineers who had maintained Vega Prime's power grid. They had worked quietly, never asking for praise or recognition. They had just done their job, day after day, year after year. Vex 9 had supported the vote to send them away. She had believed vegan engineers could do the job just as well. She had been wrong. On Earth, President Lavra Adams sat in her office, reading the latest intelligence reports from galactic space. Her advisor, Secretary of Defense Robert Taylor, sat across from her. "Lavra, the refugee situation is getting worse," Robert said. "We have 6 million aliens requesting permission to enter Earth space. They're fleeing the chaos in their own systems." Lavra had been expecting this. As alien worlds died, the survivors would look for somewhere safe to go. Earth was the most stable place in the galaxy. "What's our current policy on refugees?" "We're accepting applications on a case-by-case basis. Priority goes to aliens who supported human involvement in galactic affairs. We're rejecting anyone who voted for our expulsion." Lavra nodded. It seemed fair. The aliens who had wanted humans to leave could live with the consequences of that choice. "Any requests from former assembly members?" Robert checked his notes. 3 dozen so far, including Vex 9 from Vega Prime and Chancellor Vex Prime from the Draconian Empire. Lever remembered both of those names. They had been among the strongest supporters of human expulsion. What's their situation? Vega Prime is dying. Atmospheric failure. Maybe 6 months before the planet becomes uninhabitable. The Draconian Empire has collapsed into civil war. Vex Prime is hiding on a refugee ship with about 10,000 other survivors. Lavra thought about it. These were the same aliens who had stood up in the assembly and denounced human involvement. They had called humans controlling and oppressive. They had demanded independence. What should we tell them? Robert smiled grimly. The same thing we tell everyone. Earth is not involved in galactic affairs. We wish them well in resolving their difficulties. 5 years later, the galaxy had learned the hardest lesson of all. Independence wasn't just about making your own choices. It was about living with the consequences of those choices. The aliens had wanted to be treated like adults instead of children. Adults took responsibility for their own problems. Adults didn't get rescued when they made bad decisions. The humans had finally given them exactly what they asked for, and it had destroyed them. In the end, the greatest tragedy wasn't that the galaxy had collapsed. The greatest tragedy was that it could have been prevented with a simple word: please. If the aliens had said, "Please help us," instead of "Leave us alone," the humans would have stayed. If they had asked for cooperation instead of demanding independence, the galaxy would still be thriving. But pride had been more important than survival. And now the galaxy was paying the price for that pride. The humans had walked away quietly, just as they had promised. And behind them, they left a galaxy in ruins, learning too late that some gifts are only missed after they're gone forever.